Joining us now from Sao Paulo is Mauricio Saverese. He's a journalist who's covered politics and the presidential elections in Brazil. With us in our Washington, D.C. studio is Paulo Sotero. He's the director of the Brazil Institute at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. And from Rio de Janeiro, we're joined by Bernardo Sorj. He's a non-resident senior fellow with the Latin America Initiative at the Brookings Institution. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Paulo, let me start with you. It wasn't that long ago that Brazil was considered this big success story. The World Bank said that between 2003 and 2013, Brazil experienced a decade of social and economic progress. 26 million people taken out of poverty, inequality reduced. What happened?
What happened is starting in 2010, 2011, particularly after the inauguration of President Dilma Rousseff, was economic mismanagement, was political incompetence, political arrogance, and revelations of a major corruption scandal involving Brazil's largest company by the parties that form the coalition that supports the president. Brazilians obviously are completely shocked by this. She was re-elected at the end of 2014, but when the size, the dimension of this crisis hit the people, people realized what had happened. Her credibility and her popularity went to the floor.
Mauricio, how do the people of Brazil see this?
Well, people didn't see it because during the election, there were so many issues involved that they didn't see that the economic slowdown was really coming. President Dilma Rousseff also made a campaign on points that pointed at a different Brazil this year, with more spending, with a different kind of political framework as well, more to the left. And what happened since she was elected is that she didn't deliver any of that, because she disfranchised her own base by adopting the fiscal adjustments that she promised not to embrace, and she didn't bring any of the others in the opposition that were against her in the first place. So there's a very big sense of discontent that could endure for the next 3 years or so, or something in the middle can happen for a different turn in Brazilian politics in the next few months.
Right, and Bernardo, one of the policies that President Rousseff has adopted is that of serious austerity measures. How is this going to affect ordinary Brazilians?
Okay, let me, if I may, add two issues to my previous fellows that already explained what did happen in Brazil. One, should be also reminded that the price of commodities went down in the region in general. This is creating problems all around the regions. And of course, all what has been said is right, but we also need to remember that the new economic situation, global economic situation, slowdown of China, and the falling price of commodities is impacting also Brazil. And the second point about the social changes that did happen in the last 12 years in Brazil, which were real, at the same time, I think one is a bit one-sided to only emphasize the amelioration of the poorest sector of the economy. For the middle classes, the situation didn't improve so much. In fact, because the public services in Brazil quality is so bad, most of the services are being paid. That includes schools, education, private health insurance, and so on, besides what every citizen is obliged to pay for the public service. Then I think there is a long-term accumulation of unsatisfaction in the middle classes against the general economic situation. And the point is that with the current crisis, the general situation is deteriorating, not only for the middle class, but also for the poorest sector of society. It was mentioned that unemployment is increasing, but it's increasing even more in the regions, in the north and northeast, the poorest regions of Brazil, where the Pt2, it was traditionally very strong. That is also affecting the capacity of government to get social support for the party. And in fact, the Dilma's government, in the current situation, has not much space to emphasize social policies. In fact, at the level of education, for instance, most of the programs for grants for students of low classes are being cut. Then the situation, it must be said, is deteriorating very rapidly for all sectors of society.
Paulo, you wanted to say?
Yes, it's what is described now by Sorj, by Bernardo, is correct. Yes, the economic situation was deteriorating. It was deteriorating for everybody, not only for Brazil. The tragedy of this is that the government in Brazil failed to read this and to take the necessary conclusions to start reverting the economy, setting the economy in a new direction at the time where we already had indications of a slowdown. They pushed forward, and they actually, by doing so, they aggravated the situation, and we have now, as Bernardo just described, a very, very serious crisis.
Mauricio, President Rousseff has adopted some measures.
May I jump in?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
No, I was going just to mention that it seems that most Brazilians agree that there's trouble with the government and how they run things, but there are two separate discussions at the moment. One of them is about how poorly government is doing and how poorly President Dilma Rousseff is doing, and the other one is whether she committed any crime during her term or not, and that is the debate that is driving Brazilian society now. Most people in the last Datafolha poll said that she should be impeached because her government is unpopular, but other forces are thinking differently because they think that she did not commit any crime during during her terms, and the people who are many of the very people who are accusing her of committing crimes are involved with corruption cases in the Petrobras scandal. So there are two separate ways to discuss how her government is doing. One of them is by its sheer performance, which is very poor for most Brazilians, and another discussion is to debate whether impeachment rules should apply to the case of a government that is unpopular.
Right, Bernardo, we are hearing these calls for impeachment, but one of the things that President Rousseff is emphasizing and calling for is political stability. I mean, if you look at some of the measures she's taken, she's cutting 8 ministries in government, she's trying to cut the federal bureaucracy, she's reshuffled her cabinet. Let's take a listen to what she said.
Sabemos que existem dificuldades econômicas.
We know there are economic difficulties that must be overcome for the country to start growing again. We know that if we make mistakes, we have to fix them. If we do something right, we have to improve that and move forward. But to do so, we need political stability.
So there we have a situation, Bernardo, where the president is emphasizing political stability. I mean, these moves that she's announced, are they going to work?
Let's put it this way. At this moment, I agree with you that President Dilma did put as Minister of Finance a very conservative person related to the banking system, and in fact is not moving far enough and quick enough because problems in the Congress to approve the measures. There is no doubt about it. And now, the point is that the crisis is already installed. Now, I agree completely with Mauricio that impeachment should not be related to public opinion polls. This is nothing to do with an impeachment that should have legal and political basis. And at this moment, the legal basis can be discussed. Some people believe there is enough reasons, others don't think so. The political will, I don't think, is still there. And although the society at large, they would support Dilma's impeachment because they are very unsatisfied, I think that the moment of social political crisis didn't arrive. If I may guess a prognosis, that I'm probably going to be wrong, this is going to happen around March, April next year, when the economic situation will deteriorate even more. People will go to the streets. The scandal of corruption related to Petrobras probably will continue to make some more findings, and maybe the political conditions for the impeachment will come. The legal conditions probably will always can be discussed, and there are not strong reasons, but there are some reasons. At the end of the day, I think it's going to be politics, and not so much what she is trying to do. You can say it's good what she's trying to do, but maybe politically it's too late.
Paulo, the government has suffered several setbacks in courts as far as impeachment is concerned, but now we've got the Brazilian Supreme Court which has entered the picture, and it has effectively frozen these opposition attempts to impeach her, right?
For 1 month.
Yeah.
In November, they will consider this motion, which has to do with procedural things related to an impeachment. There are various avenues, and I agree with Mauricio totally that this will follow a constitutional path. What people say in the street doesn't matter. It will be either because she mismanaged the accounting of the government. This could eventually, if approved by Congress, there was a recommendation by the accounting tribunal in Brazil to reject her accounting. That could become grounds for a crime of responsibility, an impeachable offense. There could be also in the electoral tribunal other actions. This is actually going to be decided by people in the Supreme Court. A majority has been appointed to the Supreme Court by President Dilma Rousseff and her predecessor and mentor, President Lula. So there will not be an unconstitutional impeachment in Brazil.
Mauricio, very quickly, just when we're talking about impeachment, I mean, one of the investigations that's been carried out right now in Brazil is to look at alleged irregularities in the last election. If they are found to be these irregularities, does that invalidate the election? Will there be new elections then?
Well, one of the things that President Dilma is scrutinizing in the next few weeks is whether she's going to take every single case to the Supreme Court, and even a decision by the Electoral Court could be taken to the Supreme Court at last, because she believes that the Electoral Court does not have the powers to oust a president and a vice president from the equation. But one thing that is important to bear in mind is that the audit court that rejected her books in 2014, these kinds of courts, they exist in the states and they exist in the cities as well. So a rejection of the president's accounts might trigger state accounting courts and municipal accounting courts as well to rule in a similar path. Next year we have a mayoral election, and I find it very hard to believe that that kind of decision by the audit court is going to be taken at an extreme of removing a president, a sitting president, from office. So if that part is out of the equation, the pressure on the Electoral Court would be very different, and we'd have to wait and see whether that sticks or not. The pressure on seven justices, would be much more difficult to predict than the scenario we have now. In Brazil, I don't make any predictions in Brazilian politics that last longer than a week. So I'm holding my position on this one.
Okay, Bernardo, I know you want to say something, but we're going to have to take a break right now. I'll come back to you right after that break. We'll have more of our conversation about Brazil's economic and political challenges right after this. Stay with us. You're watching The Heat.